9,990. 9,995. 10,000 lines of code. There you go. I've had a productive morning in true Hollywood programmer hacker style. I've written 10,000 lines of code. I don't know what it does. I'm not sure it really does anything, but it's 10,000 lines. Now, that might seem absurd to you. The idea that productivity can be measured by lines of code. Oh, hello, I'm Jason from Codemanship, by the way. But there are still a lot of companies out there that measure developers in that kind of way, whether it's story points delivered or features delivered or lines of code, output in terms of stuff produced, code produced, features produced. And this is, in my experience, a very naive measure of productivity. Be careful what you wish for. We have a tendency to get what we measure. So when you reward developers, and whether it's with money or whether it's with promotions, when we reward developers to produce more stuff, then that's what we tend to get. The more experienced developer might have a productive day deleting code, whether they're refactoring duplication or removing entire features that aren't being used. Code costs between 7 and 10 times as much to maintain over its lifetime as it does to write in the first place. So we need to be very, very careful about the code that we add to our product, about what we check into that code base at the end of the day. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, about this idea of productivity. One of the hardest things for a developer to do, I've found, and I struggle with this as well, is throwing things away. I'm always having to remind myself that everything I do in code, even when I'm doing it like this, is an experiment, and experiments can fail. And because code can cost so much more to maintain over its lifetime, we have to be very brutally honest with ourselves and go, do we really want to add this to the product? And if the answer is no, we don't want to live with this code for however many years it's going to be. The average is 8 for a software product. Then maybe we should consider throwing it away. And that is culturally very difficult. It's difficult for us as developers because we're invested in it now. And it's difficult for our employers because they've spent money on it. And they don't want to throw money away. They see it as waste. But the real waste tends to come downstream in software development. It comes from the things that we could have avoided, the things we could have prevented that are now going to cost us a lot more. This is the idea behind technical debt, that when we make these suboptimal decisions or when we add things to our code bases that are going to be expensive to maintain going forward, then we kind of end up having to pay interest on those decisions. It might save us a bit of time up front, or it might be that we spent some money on something and we don't want to throw it away, but then it's going to cost us 7 to 10 times as much going forward. So all of the decisions we should be making should be about what not to add to the code base. It's what you leave out very often that defines how productive you really are in terms of solving a problem in the most economical way possible. There's also this thing that I like to call the muse or inspiration or whatever it is. It is a nonsense that we can be productive, creative problem solvers in a kind of predictable 8 hours a day, 9 to 5 kind of fashion. That's not how this job works. You might solve a problem in the shower when you get home. You might solve a problem, as I often do, in your sleep. And so you do need to be disciplined about walking away, about when it's not working, don't try to push it. Don't beat your head against the problem over and over again, expecting the problem to solve itself. You can't bench press your way out of these things. You have to kind of let it come. That's the way that problem solving and inspiration works. So you need to be good at managing yourselves, and that requires you to be honest about what really constitutes productivity for a developer. Productivity is not code produced or features produced or story points delivered. Productivity is solving problems, and that is inherently unpredictable. It's creative, and therefore that's what makes it so unpredictable. And the better we get at solving problems by creating less code, by adding less features, the more productive we will be. So that's my kind of message for today. Productivity is not output. when people talk about the flow of value, or they talk about story point velocity, or all these kind of notions or lines of code per day, or whatever it is, just remind them that that's not the end goal. The end goal is to solve the customer's problem. And if you can solve the customer's problem with 5 features instead of 50, then you should definitely do that. So you're always asking yourself, what's the least we can do? What's the simplest thing we can do? It kind of helps if you're a bit lazy, actually. The most energetic developers, the ones who I've seen them work and they're there all night and they can go for hours, but then you look at what they produce and it's a nightmare to maintain and it's a nightmare to support. Very often they don't understand it themselves. It's more like sort of train of thought kind of stuff, like automatic writing, which is one of the reasons, and I'll leave you on this note, that I don't buy into the whole speed typing thing, the whole let's all learn to type faster. There is no known connection really between how fast developers type and how productive they are. I've worked with developers who have medical conditions or they have disabilities that mean that they can't type fast. They, for example, have to type with one hand. And I have noticed many, many times that at the end of our pairing session, we've achieved as much, if not more. And I sometimes wonder whether that kind of slowing down actually helps them. They're typing, they're not typing faster than they can think. And I'm about 20 to 30 words a minute. I don't touch type, I'm not a great typist at all, but I've always resisted the temptation to think I should really learn how to touch type. I'm fast enough to demonstrate, hopefully if you watch my screencasts, and I'm certainly fast enough to produce the relatively small number of lines of code, hopefully well designed and useful lines of code that I tend to produce in a day. And that's true for all of us. So productivity, it's not what you think it is, and it's certainly not what your boss says it is. Resist the temptation to measure it by output. Focus on solving problems, and less is more. So until the next video diary, I hope you're enjoying the Armageddon, the apocalypse. Stay safe, and I'll speak to you soon. God, I've got to get this finished.